Imagine a continent rich in resources, yet its people remain among the world's poorest. Welcome to Africa. Africa, the world's second largest continent, is a land of paradoxes. It's a land where the soil beneath your feet could be teeming with diamonds, gold, or oil. Yet the people who walk on that very soil often struggle to make ends meet. It's a land where the rivers brim with fish, yet hunger remains a persistent reality. A land where the sun shines bright and the wind blows strong. Yet many homes lack electricity. This is the economic paradox of Africa, a continent so rich, yet so poor. In the post-colonial era, Africa has found itself in a precarious economic situation. Despite being endowed with over 30% of the planet's mineral reserves and having a vast agricultural potential, the continent continues to grapple with poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment. Its riches seem to be of little benefit to its people. So why this paradox? How can a land so rich be home to some of the world's poorest people? The answer to this question, my friends, is not simple. It's a complex narrative of history, politics, and economics, intertwined and interdependent. The story begins with colonialism. For centuries, Africa was under the rule of foreign powers, who were drawn to its abundant resources. From the 15th to the 20th century, the continent was carved up, controlled, and exploited by European powers, who stripped it of its resources to fuel their own industrial revolutions and economic expansions. This era of exploitation left deep scars on Africa's economic landscape. In the wake of colonial rule, Africa was left with a skewed economic structure. The economies of many African countries were primarily geared towards the extraction and export of raw materials, rather than the production and distribution of finished goods. This economic structure, coupled with the lack of investment in infrastructure, education, and health, has contributed to the continent's ongoing economic struggles. The question that arises then is, how did colonialism contribute to this economic paradox? To uncover the roots of Africa's economic paradox, we must delve into the era of colonialism. This period in history, spanning the late 19th to mid-20th century, left an indelible mark on the African continent, especially on its economies. During this era, colonial powers such as Britain, France, and Belgium implemented economic systems primarily designed to benefit themselves. One of the most prevalent systems was resource extraction. Africa, being rich in natural resources like gold, diamonds, and cocoa, became a treasure trove for these colonial powers. They mined, farmed, and harvested these resources on a massive scale, shipping the wealth back to their home countries, leaving the African soil depleted and its people impoverished. Simultaneously, the colonizers established mono-economies. This meant that each African colony was made to focus on a single cash crop or resource. For example, the Ivory Coast was known for cocoa, Zambia for copper, and South Africa for gold and diamonds. These economies were not diverse and were heavily dependent on the international market's demand for their respective products. Fast forward to the present day. The African continent is still grappling with the legacy of these economic systems. The mono-economies created during colonial times have proven to be problematic. Since these economies are heavily reliant on a single resource, they are vulnerable to market fluctuations. When the price of cocoa or copper drops, for instance, the entire economy takes a hit. Moreover, the extraction of resources has left many African countries resource poor. The wealth that could have been used to develop their economies was instead funneled to the colonizing countries. Today, these countries are still trying to recover from this economic drainage. In conclusion, the colonial era has left a profound impact on the economic landscape of Africa. The economic systems that were set up to benefit the colonizers have had long-lasting effects, creating a cycle of economic instability that Africa is still trying to break. The economic structures left by the colonizers continue to shape Africa's economic landscape. Fast forward to the present day, and the effects of colonial economic systems are still in play. In modern Africa, the economic influence of colonialism is undeniably profound. It's like a shadow that subtly but significantly shapes the landscape, present even when not directly in sight. One of the most glaring impacts is economic dependence. Many African nations, despite decades of independence, still rely heavily on former colonial powers for trade, aid, and investment. This reliance often leads to external control over economic policy, limiting these nations' ability to independently shape their economic destiny. Then, there's the issue of industrialization, or rather, the lack of it. Colonial powers in general did not invest in creating industrial bases in Africa. Instead, they focused on extracting raw materials for their own industries back home. This left a legacy of economies heavily dependent on agriculture and raw material exports, with little diversification into manufacturing or services. This lack of industrialization makes African economies vulnerable to global commodity price fluctuations and does not provide enough jobs for Africa's young and growing population. Income inequality is another major concern. The colonial era was characterized by a concentration of wealth and resources in the hands of a few. Today, despite the end of colonial rule, this pattern of wealth distribution has not changed significantly. In fact, Africa is home to some of the most unequal societies in the world, with a small elite enjoying immense wealth while the majority live in poverty. This income inequality is a major obstacle to economic development, as it limits the purchasing power of the majority and fuels social unrest. We must also mention the issue of infrastructure. Colonial powers often developed infrastructure such as roads and railways, primarily to facilitate the extraction and export of resources. This has resulted in an infrastructure network that is not necessarily designed to support domestic economic development. The economic legacy of colonialism continues to pose significant challenges for Africa's development. But with challenges come opportunities. Opportunities for innovative solutions, for new economic models, and for a future that breaks free from the shadows of the past. The struggle for economic independence in Africa is a battle fought on many fronts. The echoes of colonialism still reverberate in African economies, creating a complex web of challenges that these nations are striving to overcome. One of the key ways African nations are trying to break free from these economic chains is through diversification. For too long, many of these economies have been overly reliant on a single commodity or sector. However, in recent years, we've seen a push towards broadening the economic base. Countries like Nigeria, Angola, and South Africa are making concerted efforts to expand into areas like manufacturing, services, and technology, reducing their dependence on commodities like oil and minerals. Investment in human capital is another critical aspect of this struggle for economic independence. Education and skills development are the engines of economic growth and prosperity. Countries like Rwanda and Kenya are investing heavily in their education sectors with a particular focus on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They are fostering a generation of innovators and problem solvers who are poised to drive their economies forward. Regional integration also plays a crucial role in this struggle. By working together, African nations can create larger, more competitive markets, attract more investment, and negotiate more favorable trade deals. The African Continental Free Trade Area, a trade agreement involving 54 of the 55 African Union nations, is a testament to this commitment towards integration. However, this journey towards economic independence is not without its hurdles. Issues like corruption, poor governance, and inadequate infrastructure continue to pose significant challenges. But it's important to remember that change is a process, not an event. It takes time, patience, and persistence. While the path towards economic independence is fraught with challenges, African nations are making strides in the right direction. The journey may be long and arduous, but the destination, a prosperous, economically independent Africa, is well worth the struggle. But the story doesn't end here. You have the power to influence Africa's economic future. Just as ripples spread out when a single pebble is dropped into water, the actions you take can have far-reaching effects. One of the most impactful ways you can contribute to Africa's economic development is by equipping yourself with knowledge. Understanding the complex dynamics and unique challenges of Africa's economy can empower you to make informed decisions and meaningful contributions. Consider subscribing to economic journals or following African economists on social media. Learn about the diverse economies of the continent, the unique challenges they face, and the creative solutions they are implementing. Knowledge is power, and with power comes the ability to effect change. Supporting African businesses is another tangible way to contribute to economic growth. By buying African-made goods, you're not just acquiring a product, you're investing in the dreams of entrepreneurs, the livelihoods of workers, and the prosperity of communities. Whether it's a piece of art, a cup of coffee, or a piece of technology, remember that behind every product is a story of hard work, resilience, and ambition. And let's not forget the power of advocacy. advocate for fair trade policies that promote sustainable development and economic justice. Fair trade ensures that producers in developing countries get a fair price for their products, which can lead to improved social, economic, and environmental standards. Write to your representatives, join advocacy groups, or use your platform to raise awareness about the importance of fair trade. Remember, every action, no matter how small, can contribute to the bigger picture. You have the power to help shape a narrative of growth, resilience, and prosperity. The economic future of Africa is not just in the hands of its leaders and policymakers, it's in your hands too. By understanding the past and taking action today, you can play a part in shaping a prosperous economic future for Africa.